Lesley. Questions for Coach Lesley? Greg?
This is Jordan. Start with the the matchup with their offensive coordinator. New offensive coordinator. You've seen him in the past, but how do you marry the talent and the personnel they have at Penn State that you saw with the coordinator and what he does?
It'll be interesting to see how much of the the carryover from Kansas to Penn State, because the personnel is if you just look at what's returning, it's quite a bit different than how he used the personnel at Kansas. So, it's really kind of a, I would say a vanilla approach, and then go see early in the game what it is, but it's going to be the same. I would think it'll be the same type structure. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of eye candy, and alignment's going to be key. And so, but he's got a lot of respect for him. He does a phenomenal job.
You get too far down the rabbit hole with what he's done in the past, even going back to Buffalo and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, you look at a little bit of everything, and kind of the changes. With I think the best thing that he does is he does what his personnel can do. Mm-hmm. And so, you look at we know the personnel well. Most of the production from last year's back, the running backs, tight end. So, we're familiar with that.
That's what interesting is. Neil mentioned, you go back to the Buffalo to find a match between what Andy does and what the quarterback's capable of doing. I mean, obviously, Aller's different than Daniels was when he had Kansas. So, I mean, I guess that's something to go off a little bit because that's what he's got.
Right. And like I said, I'm sure there's some – he's been creative everywhere he's been. So I'm sure there's some creative things that he's going to do with Drew and the running backs and tight ends and those guys. And so got that other quarterback that's very similar to what he's had. So and I would expect to see those. So we'll but like I said, you're just going to have to – I'll know at noon Saturday, or 12:05 or whatever it's going to be.
Neil said he didn't go to Penn State because he didn't have players.
Correct. Exactly.
Jordan, a lot of talk of hoping the fans get really loud when WVU's on defense to kind of disrupt what Penn State wants to do on offense. But for you, I mean, do you want that to be a little bit, that noise level a little bit lower, just so you can get the play call in? Or you want? Okay.
No, I think they'll, and I challenge, our fans. I think that could be a big factor in the game. And not only when things are going good. I mean, they have good players. Those running backs, they're all across their offense, receiver, tight end, quarterback's a good player, and they're gonna make some plays. They're a good team. So just like I tell our players, this next play mentality. And I think our fans, carry that same mindset into it. Can be a huge factor. And everybody's asked me that because of the, no, be as loud as you can be.
You look at Penn State. Obviously, they got some new guys on offensive line. They lost their tackle last year, but does it start with Dawkins and Wormley? And I did read somewhere, I think Franklin said he's got 8 that he feels good that he can rotate in and out there. Is that what you see?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll. I think probably just kind of reading the media stuff. Like I think they probably feel good who the 5 are, and I think they'll rotate some guys. I know there's some young guys that they like, but I think we're expecting 7, 8.
What do you see from Wormley? He's been a guy that's been there a long time. He's kind of their guard, their right guard.
Really strong. He's good at staying on his tracks, powerful at the point of contact, and does a good job.
It's as warm as they expect Saturday. You're going to need your depth. You comfortable with where you're at? You've talked about that throughout preseason. So where are you depth-wise?
Yeah, I think we're comfortable with it. I mean, we've, some things. Some guys have really made some strides in that second group, particularly, last year we've talked about linebacker. That's something that we feel good right there with our depth. Corner and safety, this is the best we've felt going into a season. And then the defensive line, we've been rotating guys for 3 or 4 years like that. So feel pretty good about it.
And one guy we haven't mentioned, tight end, big target, similar size-wise to Cole. What is the tight end? What's the issues there with him?
Yeah, so I bragged on him the same time last year, and he was a backup, but he had put some things on film where you're like, whoa, you know, and he's a guy, and how Andy will use him. It'll probably be there'll be some very creative ways he'll use him, some moving pieces. He's really good at finding matchups. So we've got to just kind of play the chess match to get the ones we like. But he's definitely somebody you circle when you watch film.
George, you mentioned a couple times, I mean, the questions are inevitable with their offensive coordinator, but it's not like he's just going to put the Kansas playbook in and go. I get that. And you said he's good at matchups. When you know a guy or don't know a guy who's calling plays, is that where you start, or do you look somewhere else like, all right, how do I get to know this guy and what makes him tick?
Yeah, I mean, you watch. You know, I always like to watch a game, you know, a couple of games, just kind of try to get a general feel. Then everything you do from that point is just situationally. And what are the personnels, what are the play sets? And then that, you know, get to that point, then what are the moving pieces, what are the so then that's really where you, in my opinion, you get to know the guys and the key situations that whatever you think those are, that's what you study, and you just go from there. And then if it's a game one, a new guy, then, you know, you got to be careful how far down that rabbit hole you go, and, you know, really just get your defense lined up, shed blocks, make tackles.
Turn back to depth a little bit. Last year, because of circumstances, you didn't rotate linebackers and corners very much. You just didn't have the personnel. Do you anticipate with better depth that you rotate regularly, or do you still go with the hot hand? And what do you think?
It just depends on the flow of the game and where and what that looks like, and what you start to kind of see what their plan is, and we would like to be able to rotate, but whether you get into it and there's something that you're having to adjust to with, you want your best players, you know, making those adjustments first, and so. But we'd like to be able to rotate guys more than we have.
A lot of talk about last year's game, third and fourth down situations that they did. They may have won the game right there, and that's compared to what your offense did. How do you approach that? How do you approach from one year to the next when that is something you have to improve?
Well, the third and fourth down starts on first down. You know, you have to. You know, that's. You know, I went back and watched the Kansas game from 22, and that was one of the big glaring things was 3rd and 4, 5, and 6. And being able to get off the field in those situations. Now we're quite a bit different than we were then, especially personnel-wise. But those situations are how you played first down, and that's where you have to get into a favorable situation. Starts back, and then being smart on second down. You know, I mean, it all ties in together. But what offenses like to do, particularly him, you know, third in that medium range is tough, and you got to get them in the right position and execute the play based on whatever it may be, the down distance, the field zone, red zone, backed up, whatever, coming out, whatever it is. So that's going to be key.
I know lineups are people are getting close to the vest with it. I don't know if Penn State will give you a 2 deep. I'm not sure you'll give one out. But my question is it your guys, were there a lot of position battles where they were like really close, or were they clear cut? How did it shake out this year to what you're going into this game?
It was extremely competitive at most every position. You know, particularly, you know, linebacker and secondary. And, you know, and we create that. Well, you create that through, you know, whatever you're recruiting, high school or portal, whatever. And that's the only thing that really creates it is guys know that now I have good players around me. And so I have to perform and execute every day. And so that's where, you know, through the spring, we saw it in some positions, but fall camp, it was spread throughout the whole defense, which is a good thing. there was some really tight. There was some really tight battles.
I'm assuming last year that wasn't necessarily the case going into the opener.
No.
How much of an advantage is it for you to have the game last year under your belt? Obviously, there's a lot of changes we've talked about, but you do have that direct film.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think our guys, really last year, if you look at going into the locker room at halftime and the things we had talked about, we forced, I think it was 2 missed field goals, and we're right there in it. And I don't think our kids really didn't blink in that environment, which was tough. And was the third play of the game was a touchdown, and they didn't panic, they didn't freak out, and so kind of you see that same feeling with these guys going in, but it obviously helps, just knowing, an opponent. I don't know, when was the last time before last year? Does anybody know when?
92.
92. So that's a long time, and just now they got that year. I mean, our guys know who Penn State is, obviously, any college football fan does, but being on the field with them and seeing that, and it can't hurt.
And then another question off of kind of what John was bringing up, especially with a guy like Burks, kind of a different role a little bit on the defense positionally. Is a game like this going to be able to call for switching things up at halftime? Like if a starter is just not getting it done, will you be able to switch things up, or is that harder to do in a game like this, but you don't want to let a game get away from you?
No, I mean, it really just depends on the flow of the game, and what's going on, or but if that's the case with a starter or one of our really good players, then we have options. We just next guy. Not going to change. Don't have to change the whole defense because one guy's not performing well. If that's what you're asking.
Yeah, especially in a game like this where if
Sure.
someone doesn't perform well in 1 or 2 plays, that game could unravel.
Yeah. No, we don't. We're just next guy in.
Jordan, the body types, the types of players that you've brought in here over the last, just say, 2 years, especially via the transfer portal or high school recruiting. Obviously, you're trying to win Big 12 games, but is this the type of game when it's going to be very physical, that you're kind of recruiting guys that can win in that style of game? Is that fair?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that the body type, the mentality that you recruit. That's as much of a part of the evaluation, because if you're going to make toughness and effort and physicality, if that's one of your core, which it is for us, one of your core beliefs, your core values, well then it's hard to take somebody that doesn't have that and make them that. So, but and then there is a physical piece of that, a body type piece. So yeah, we've been intentional about that in the evaluation process.
When you look at them personnel-wise, and I guess when you start comparing them to teams that you played in the past, I mean, would you mention Texas, Oklahoma? Would that be the types of athletes and players that you're dealing with?
Yes, very similar.
Okay.
One more on your depth. You were curious about this. Now it sounds like you're confident, like you kind of got to where you thought you were going to go. Are there players, young, old, new, that kind of made this possible, like a returning player who brought everybody along, or somebody who was a redshirt freshman or a newcomer that pushed a position along, where you feel so good about your depth and you're too deep?
Yeah, I think that especially at linebacker, we've talked about Trot, and would have been a significant contributor with how last year played out. But he's used the time to rehab, and he's had a great spring. And there's a guy, a big difference in Ben Cutter, just probably playing a role that he wasn't ready for, but which hurt him in a lot of situations last year, but helps him now down the road. If you look at up front, I think Fatorma has really made a significant strides from the first year playing a position that he didn't play there, playing it now. And then we've talked about Hammond Russell, Sonny Redwood. Those guys have really taken strides in just simple things, playing D-line. Jacoby Spells is a guy that I've talked about, and the improvement he's made, just playing faster, understanding the depth, the totality of the defense, and it shows in how he moves and how he plays. So yeah, there's some guys, and the transfer wise, You know, Garnett's done a good job. T.J. Jackson's a good pickup. You know, so there's a lot of guys that have had good fall camps and made some strides.
We good with Coach Lesley?
One more here, just your wide receivers. Some of the guys you're familiar with, some of them have cycled out, but the Fleming guy from Ohio State, what do you know about him, and what did you?
Smooth.
Yeah.
Real smooth, big, great hands, uses his body in his route running. And, you know, anytime you have a big, you know, they go, same thing. He was asking me about body types on our size. You know, those guys create some issues out on the edge, especially in what they like to do with their offense. So, really good player.